Hallelujah.
Amen.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Or Pani Supernakoko set, and that translates to glory to God. Amen.
Amen.
So thank you
Amen.
for joining me today. I want to share with you this ministry that God has given me, Stranger to Neighbor Ministry. And this ministry is the art of building relationships, specifically with people who are not like me or you or us, whatever that means, based on, and we'll talk about what that means specifically, but building relationships with all people, because we are called to reach all people for Christ. And so we have a question that's going to come up on your in the chat. I want you to look at this question today, and I want you to type in an answer for us all. And I'm going to just stay quiet for just a minute and give you a minute to give you about 30 seconds or so to go ahead and answer this question. What were you talking about in your ministry last week? And it could be just a couple of words, what happened, or what were you talking about in your ministry last week?
Gentleness. I'm going to read these out as you share your responses. I'm going to read them out for you.
Thank you.
Love.
So when you say in your ministry, are you talking about at our church or individually?
In your church, yes.
Okay.
In your church.
Inclusion. Supporting each other when we're suffering. Being thankful. Growing in the gift of gentleness. Gentleness. Reaching out to those not like us.
Amen.
A few more on gentleness last week. Looking for who is missing in scriptures. I like that. Any others?
Okay, thank you for those responses. Thank you very, very much. I asked that question because this is one of the questions that Jesus asked. What were you talking about as you walked along the way? And we know this story about the disciples walking from Jerusalem to the road to Emmaus, and they meet a stranger. And the stranger says to them, what were you talking about as you walked along the way? And the disciples responded to this question, and they looked at him and said, are you the only one who doesn't know what has happened? And the stranger said, what things? And the disciples began to tell them about how Jesus was captured and he was beaten, and how he was crucified and the placed in the tomb, and how now the body was missing, and how just they were talking about how distraught they were. What they were not talking about is the promise of the resurrection. They were not talking about the new thing that they were expecting. And they were missing it, that the new thing, that the risen Christ was standing right before them. And so I love to tell that story because it relates to the new things that God is doing in our communities, the new things that God is doing in our own churches. And what are we missing? Are we talking about what was and what happened and what used to be? Are we talking about the now and what's happening in our communities now? In this ongoing period of COVID, when we see so much change that is happening, and many, many churches are still adjusting to what's happening. Are we focused on what was, what happened, what used to be, or are we focusing on what we can do in the future and now? Now I'm going to fast forward this to, I'm going to close that, Jamie. Okay. This is the name of my book. It's called Church, What to Do When Everyone is Like You. And I wrote this book because many churches, I was serving churches in disaster response for several years. And I wanted to share that with you also, but I served in many churches for disaster response. And when Hurricane Florence hit North Carolina in 2018, I started in disaster response ministry, and primarily I was serving white churches, but serving inside an African-American community. And so we were building intercultural relationships, and we were building relationships across cultural boundaries of race during that time. And it was a wonderful experience. We had about 300 volunteers that came through in an 18-year period. And I continue to engage in disaster response ministry. I'm going to share some of these pictures with you. This picture here was a group that came in from Alabama to Trenton, North Carolina, and this was a group from Raleigh, North Carolina. I also served as a missionary pastor for a Burmese refugee congregation in New Bern, North Carolina. And these are some of the teenagers from my church here, and a picture of my husband, myself. We do a lot of biking. And in the bottom here, you'll see the children of my church. During that time, I learned to speak Hakachin. I did not know the language. I came in as a stranger, basically, but this was the church that God placed in front of me. And I will tell you that this church was very patient with me as I learned the language and I learned to speak it. Did I learn to speak it some? Yes. Did I speak it perfectly? Absolutely not. But it was enough that I was able to work for 3 years as a missionary pastor. And I want to share with you, let's see, here's an idea of some of what the language looks like. The word God is Boipa, Patian, Lord, and Zitukri, it's Jesus Christ. So the pastor would sit with me, and the pastor would actually was my language teacher, and so that I could perform call and response with the community and with the congregation. When I preached in English, and my sermons were translated into Hakachin. So my logo for diaspora is an egg. And as you know, an egg can be broken in two ways: pressure on the inside and pressure on the outside. If the pressure comes from the outside, that egg is crushed. That egg has to be eaten. It has to be repurposed, made into an omelet, or it just has to be thrown away. It no longer carries the potential for life. But if that egg is broken from the inside, there is new birth and new growth. I like to think of our churches as eggs, that God created all things. So as we think of our churches as eggs, when we grow from the inside, there is new birth and new growth. So when we think about the three things, our promise tonight is that we would talk about 3 ways that you can build a stranger to neighbor ministry. And those 3 ways are simple. It is awareness, it is knowledge, and it's skills. And so we're going to briefly talk about what that means in awareness, knowledge, and skills. My history of starting this journey may be similar to many of you. I was the first African-American child to attend a school, Skipworth Elementary in Richmond, Virginia, and had to navigate a culture that was not like me. It wasn't an option. It was something I was forced to do because it was the school that was available to me. And during that time, there were many opportunities after that, and where I began to navigate more cultures with people who were not like me, including the last one with the Burmese refugee congregation. In John 1:1, we know that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Miguel de la Torre is one of my favorite theologians, and he says in the Spanish culture, this says, "En el principio era el verbo." In the beginning was the verbo, the verb. If we use God as the word, God becomes a fixed God. But if we look at the Spanish translation, God becomes a verb, and a verb shows what? action. I saw someone say action. Carol, thank you. A verb shows action. So we are this image of God. We are this image of God to create and to do and to be, to do justice, to walk humbly with God. So this ministry is all about the actions. How can we, instead of waiting for those to come into our church, how can we focus on awareness? How can we focus on knowledge and actions, skills, so that we can grow our outreach of our church, grow the ministry of our church, and grow our discipleship within our church? So when we think of our churches, we oftentimes, this is what our church looks like, right? We're similar in race, or we're similar in generation. There's a lot of similarities. And when I talk to churches, I ask them to vision something more like this, right? And thinking about how can we reach more people based on ethnicity, gender, generation, and social class. And sometimes that becomes the elephant in the sanctuary when we're talking about how do we reach more people, who are we going to reach, how is it possible that we can reach more people for Christ? What does that look like? So I want to start with each of us. I want to start with ourselves first. If you're willing to do a challenge with me, I want you to find a sheet of paper, if possible. And I want you to write your 5 closest friends by their first name on your sheet of paper. Your 5 closest friends. And I'll give you a few minutes to do that. And if you'll type ready in the chat when you're ready, that will be great. And I'll know that everyone is ready. We have 16 people here tonight. So your 5 closest friends, just write their first name down. That's great. Jamie, let me know when everyone has responded, or mostly everyone.
That's pretty close. We might have a few more still
Okay.
working on it, but it's close.
Okay, great. Okay. So for every friend that shares your race, shares your ethnicity, race, place a 1 by their name. For everyone that shares your gender, place a 1 by their name. Deborah, I see you smiling. For every friend that shares your generation, would you place a 1 by their name? A generation would be 20 years. If they're in your generation, it would be a 20-year difference in your generation. So 20 years older or younger, they would still be in your generation. Within 20 years, I should say. For everyone that shares your social class, would you place a 1 by their name?
What that mean?
Your social class. So if you're middle class, upper class, middle upper class, if you think that the income is about the same, if it's less or more, then you would not put a 1 by their name. For everyone that shares your same educational level, you have a master's degree, give them a 1. If you have a bachelor's degree, give them a 1, and they have a bachelor's degree, but shares your same educational level. And the last one is for everyone who shares your same physical ability. Would you place a 1 by their name? Now, if you would add all of the 1s next to each name, it will be between 0 and 7. And if you would add all of those numbers together and have one big number and place that big number in the chat. Oh, no, we're going to do a poll, right? I'm sorry. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. And let's see where we are. Go ahead and answer this poll question.
Okay, we got them. They're coming in. They're coming in.
All right.
So we did have a few people just coming in now. So what we've done here, what do you want to, Reverend Dr. Danette, do you want to just reiterate really quickly?
Yes, that'd be great if everyone doesn't mind. We're asking everyone to write down their closest 5 friends, the first name of their closest 5 friends. And then of those 5 friends, I want you to place a 1 by their name if they share your same race. Put a 1 by their name if you share the same gender as this person. Place another 1 if you share the same generation. Generation is usually 20 years. And place a 1 if you share the same social class. Place another 1 if you share the same marital status as that friend. Another 1 if you share the same educational background as that friend. And the last 1 if you share the same physical ability as your friend. And then add all of the numbers next to each name. It'll be 0 to 7. And then add the big number together and place it in the poll.
So even if you didn't have time to put your answer in, at least you know where it's coming from. I'll give it a couple more minutes so you're not completely blindsided when you came in and we were in the middle of doing something. But actually, we have 13 of 16 participants have answered. So
okay, so here is the results of that. Numbers 29 to 35 means that most of your friends are culturally the same as you. No one scored there. 22 to 28, which is where most of my clients land, means that many of your friends are culturally the same as you are. They share the same race, gender, generation, or social class, many. 15 to 21 means half your friends are culturally the same. The other half are culturally diverse. And 8 to 14, many of your friends are culturally diverse or culturally different than you are. And 0 to 7 means most of your friends are different than you are. Thank you, Jamie, for that. Great. We'll share those results. So we think about why this is important, and this does become this wilderness journey for most churches, because we're moving out of the wilderness of sameness into a new diverse landscape. And that's how I frame it when I work with churches, whether online or if I work with churches in person. And we talk about how we build relationships, and we learn, of course, to build relationships from childhood. from our parents or whoever is our caregiver introduces us to another caregiver and basically says to us, this person is safe. And then we're introduced to our brothers and sisters, if we have brothers and sisters, and our parents say to us, not literally, but they, they come out and they say, this person is safe. So we play with brothers and sisters. We meet aunts and uncles. This is our Jerusalem. And then from there, often in our families, we go to our Judea, we go to our church family. We know that these people we can build relationships with. And then out towards our Samaria, which is our community at large, and building relationships. We go to first grade, second grade, 10th grade, 12th grade. We go to college, and we're learning those basic social skills from our family, and we take those outwards. Oftentimes what happens, we can see from the scores that when we learn to build relationships and socialize by our families, we stay within those family groups. And that is just something that we do as humans. We love the comfort of being in demographics that are similar to us. So how do we break that cycle? And we break that cycle by growing from the inside, by becoming more aware of who is around us. So when you think about the demographics of your church and thinking about the demographics of your community at large, who is missing in your congregation, or who is missing in your congregation that that is a member of the community at large? So Jamie, let's put up the second poll. And let me ask you this question. And the question, I'll wait till she places that on the screen. Think of the last stranger who became your neighbor or your friend. All right. What demographics did you share with them? So let's go more recently. Think about the last person who became a neighbor or friend. So let me share this. A stranger is someone we don't know. We have not had a conversation. A neighbor is someone that we meet in public space. We do not take them to a private space, but we meet them in a public space. We may meet them outside, maybe at the grocery store. A friend is someone that we'll take to we invite them to our home. And then a deep friendship is someone that we have built a lot of trust with. So think of the last stranger who became your friend. What demographics did you share? And they can answer all of these, right? Is that right, Jamie?
Yes, so you may choose as many of these that would apply to that particular situation. So yep, exactly.
Can you give those definitions again?
Sure. A stranger is someone you've never met. You do not know their name, and you really haven't met them. You have waved at them, but you've not met them. A neighbor is someone who you know their name, but you've only met them in a public space outside. You know their name, maybe you may see them at a grocery store. They're just a neighbor, right? You have not invited them into your home. You have not invited them to a place where you all have been in a private space together. That would be a friend. And then a deep friendship is someone that you actually have shared your personal information with. So you would not say deep friendship questions to a stranger, or you would not speak about friendship information to a neighbor. So it's the trust level. It goes from 0 to wherever you take that.
Okay, so I'm answering these questions based on a neighbor.
No, think of the last stranger who became your friend. When you think about the last stranger who became your friend, a real friend, what demographics did you share with them? Did y'all share the same race, the same gender, the same generation, the same social class? And the reason I ask that question is because it speaks to our skills today. So you may have met your last stranger, or your last stranger who became your friend. It may have been last week, last month, last year. So we're seeing high rates of race, 64%, gender, 79%, generational friends, it's 71%, social class, 50%, and there's some others there that are 7%. Now imagine if that was all zero. Imagine if we were building relationships with people who are not like us, and those numbers would be a lot less. So it is our comfort level, and it's not a judgment. It's just to say that if we are to reach all people for Christ, building relationships and outreach and discipleship is all about building relationships. And so we're speaking of both life, this is life, and ministry. And whatever habits we have in our life are also the habits that we have in our ministry. So how, as we see the demographics in our communities change around us, whether it's urban renewal or whether it's just the demographics are changing, there's more younger people, there's more older people, there's different ethnicities or races coming into the community where your church building stands. How are we strategically reaching across cultural boundaries? Is it faith partnerships with other churches? And as we have these faith partnerships, are we really building relationships with those other communities? Or are we just providing the space and we have not engaged with the other pastor to say, you know what, let's get together. Let's have a pastor peer group. Let's share how we can grow in ministry together, even if it's a different denomination or a different language. Maybe you have language meetings where you're growing your relationships, or you're joining Sunday school classes for the children who are bilingual and the adults are not. Let's see, let me try to take that off. Great. So when we think about, I wanted to, this is why I use an egg for my logo. EGGS stands for ethnicity, gender, generation, and social class. So when you think of eggs, how are you growing your eggs in life and ministry? In ethnicity, gender, generation, and social class? Are you growing from the inside with new awareness, with new knowledge and new skills? Or are you just staying in your comfort zone? That is, of course, much easier, but it may not grow your outreach. It may not grow your discipleship. So we know this from Matthew 25, and this is what our ministries do. Our ministries feed people. Our ministries welcome people in. It clothes people, and it takes care of folks. It takes them out of bondage. And this is what we do when we engage in ministry. And so shall we stay within our own groups and humanity, whatever that is, or can we find ways to reach across cultural boundaries for Christ? And awareness is, conversations like this bring awareness. Awareness is learning a different language. Awareness is knowing what the demographics are outside the walls of your church. Awareness is having people in your congregation maybe go out and do some demographic studies that help us to understand who is missing in our congregation and who can we reach and what are the needs in the community that we can fulfill. And let me stop there to say that when I talk about fulfilling needs, I'm talking about transformational relationships, not transactional relationships, right? So we can actually, yes, we can provide things for folks, but are we building relationships in our providing? Do we know who we're providing? Am I changed if I'm in relationship with Skipper? I hope that I am changed because of Skipper, and Skipper is changed because of me. I hope that it is not just a transactional relationship where he is providing clothes for my family, but there is real relationship building there. And how do we do that? So awareness about the folks that are around us is critical to us building a stranger to neighbor ministry. Knowledge would be what comes next, would be learning the languages or getting the information, or taking a course like Stranger to Neighbor Ministry. I say that first, you hear churches that have difficult conversations, and after the difficult conversations or challenging conversations, there's no lift off after that. There's just the conversation, or there's a meal with people of different races or different demographics. But there's nothing that connects the people together. So whenever you have these difficult conversations, always say, what's next? How are we going to build momentum in this conversation and make this into something that becomes actionable? How do we make this transformational? How do I get to know Carol and Jamie and Skipper and Deborah? How do I get to know people who are not like me? And it's going to be uncomfortable. So don't expect that it's going to be easy. It's not. And it is it's like our folks that come and sit in the same place in the sanctuary every week. They sit in the same space. And someone sits in that space that they usually sit in. It's not always comfortable. It is discomfort, but we have to find comfort in the discomfort. And I can tell you that when I sat in the pews of First Chin Baptist Church in Newbern, North Carolina, not understanding any of the songs, not understanding the congregation, not understanding the culture, not understanding what mass prayer was. And mass prayer is when everyone prays out loud, but not in unison. So everyone has a different prayer. They pray it out loud. It's a beautiful experience. And everything about it was in my discomfort zone. I had to learn the culture. And so there's nothing wrong with that. There was no one judging me. As a matter of fact, they were as I said, they were very patient with me. And I took the little children's classes, the kindergartners classes for the languages so that I could learn more and learn quicker. Let me stop there and just see, well, let me say this question. 2 questions that I tell pastors that they can ask their congregation is, 1, why did you join this church? When you receive that answer, like if you go to the last 10 people that joined your church or the last 1% of people that joined your church and ask that question, why did you join this church? You will find out what is working in your ministry. You will find out the outreach that is working, whatever that answer is. And that's a blessing and something for you to really continue to move in that vein. When you ask the other question to people who have left the church, why did you leave our congregation? You'll find out where the gaps are. And whatever that reason is, to find a way to bridge whatever that answer is. It could be that they moved at a new job. It could be that they had a falling out with someone. Then, of course, you may not have known that before and found out where is the gap that was not able to be filled because this congregant left the church. So I love to share those 2 questions. If you're ever able to use those and you find something out that you didn't know, by all means, text me. And if you want to have a Zoom call about it, I'd love to talk to you about that. Anytime that we learn a new skill, there's like 4 ways of learning a new skill. And the first thing is, I don't know what I don't know. So I don't know what I don't know. So whether it's golf or whether it's discipleship or whether it's outreach, I don't know what I don't know. And by asking the right questions, and one of the questions we asked this afternoon was, what were you talking about as you walked along the way? In my Christian coaching, I use the questions of Jesus often to have people really dig deeply into what they're feeling, what they're experiencing in their life and in their ministry. So I want to stop there and ask if there's any questions right now.
You're welcome to unmute, or you can add them in the chat and I'll be happy to read those out and she can see them as well. Any questions?
I guess I want to ask a question. and I guess you're probably getting there in your presentation later, but do you provide suggestions as far as fulfilling that part?
Oh, absolutely. So I have a course that I actually go to churches and spend a weekend with them. And we actually go through this book. You could go through the book yourself. It's Church, What to Do When Everyone is Like You. And so we spend 4 hours. I had a session yesterday with a church in Marion, North Carolina, but we started at 8 o'clock. We ended at 1 o'clock. And then we spend 4 or 5 hours together. And on Sunday, I preach on Sunday morning, and then we have another talkback session about an hour later. And then I stay with this church for 90 days, and every 30 days we meet with actionable items happening in the 30 days. So we have assignments, and then we come back and have a group coaching session. And I especially love meeting with ministry leaders. Sometimes it's the whole congregation. Sometimes it's the ministry team of the church. So it depends on whoever you believe will be actionable. In June, we'll have this course online again. We're revamping the online program, and you can take it for individuals, but it is so much more fun and I think actionable when you're taking it in a group setting, and the church talks about how they can move forward in different ministries, whether it's that's another that's another question, right? Let me go ahead and I'll say this, whether it's better for who can engage today, whether it's youth and adults, whether it's the choir, who do you feel can benefit the quickest or the fastest from this type of ministry right now? Who could you engage right now that would jump into this? So let's do that poll question now, Jamie, if you don't mind.
So I think what we may want to do is actually backtrack one more in thinking about the demographics that is outside of the community, as Reverend Dr. Danette was talking about. Who is it that's missing? And so I think this question that she's come up with here, let's launch this one first and see where we're at with that.
Okay. Regarding race, gender, generation, and social class, identify one demographic group you seek to reach. Well, coming in.
Okay, that looks like pretty much everyone. I'll share
Great.
these results.
Yeah, so 13% of us said, I'm sorry, 31% of us said race across racial boundaries, 8% gender, 54% generational outreach. Excellent. And then other. Let me ask what the other is. Would somebody be willing to share?
Yeah, if you happen to be someone who chose other, if you could just put it in the chat. Okay, yeah, so we have it coming in the chat.
LGBTQIA. Yes. Thank you for that. And so how we do this is the same, whether it's race, gender, generation, sexuality, gender, all of it is reaching across cultural boundaries. And so whether you are, depending on your demographic that you have within your church, it is learning how to step out of that comfort zone. And maybe you need more awareness. Maybe if you're reaching out to LGBTQIA and you just don't have enough knowledge, maybe you need more awareness. And so where can you go and achieve that awareness about this specific community? Where can you find out what are the needs for spiritual growth? Who can you connect with who will share their relational capital with you, their social capital with you, so that you can learn more, because we are responsible for our own growth. I truly believe that. I believe that it's up to us to go out and seek the information that we need. But whether it is gender, generation, social class, race, or sexuality, it is imperative that we receive the information, that we don't assume this is what's needed. I've seen stories of churches that have built playgrounds, saying, oh, there's a lot of children in the neighborhood and we need to build a playground. And so they build a playground without any input from the families to find out if there was really a playground needed. So it's really important for us to do the outreach, to do the research within our communities and find out what are those needs? Where can we actually step in as the body of Christ and really serve a community that has a specific need? Thank you for sharing. Jamie, you want to share the last one, please?
Okay, it's up now.
So which ministry in your church is best suited to begin a stranger to neighbor ministry journey? Where do you want to serve a demographic in your church? Where's going to be that entry point? Is it going to be children and youth, young adults, ministry leadership, maybe even the Sunday school teachers or the music ministry? Where would you have the best entry point to start awareness, knowledge, and skills? Okay, 14 out of 14. So there we have it. Youth and children, young adults, ministry leadership, and music. And those are excellent answers. I would love to speak with you at any time if you want to reach out to me. Jamie, you can put your email in the chat, and I'm happy to give you a call back and try to figure out what's going to be the best way for you to begin this journey, whether it's going to be online, in person, whether it's going to be a book study within your church. And we can certainly help you to go in this direction. My mission is to help churches reach all people for the sake of the gospel. And I'm so thankful to be in this space. I'm so thankful that this is the ministry that God has placed in front of me. And I'm here as a resource, and I'm, of course, happy to speak with you directly. And with that said, does anyone have any other questions? You can unmute yourself and talk. See anything in the chat?
I'd like to know more about, when you said you would come in and talk to congregations about how they might be able to identify and implement these things. And then you said you're going to be there for a really long time. And I was like, wow, that's a long time she's dedicating. So what is that experience like? And I don't know if anybody else is thinking this, but I was like, I wonder what she's charging to do this, to come in and to share all of this wisdom and knowledge and to remain in that space and really navigate people into a stranger to neighbor ministry right there in their own context.
Absolutely. So it is a 90-day commitment that we ask people to engage with. So it's the half a day seminar, which is, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I've had some churches say, can you do it in 2 different sessions, which is fine if I don't have to stay overnight. But oftentimes I do stay overnight if it's a Saturday teaching plus a Sunday engagement and then the Sunday talkback session. And then in 30 days, we get together again. There's some homework assignments during the week where we are posting things for outreach. We are completing exercises in the book. We all get together for a group coaching call. We talk about issues that we've encountered during that past 30 days and what were the roadblocks, what were the gaps that we found during that 30-day period. And then we have another assignment, wait another 30 days and get together again. And we do that 3 separate times. And I found that that has been the best way to make sure that the groups and the churches and the pastors are engaging in the ministry. We're not just having a book study and then going to the next book. It's actually something that we're going to move to the next level and engage the ministries that we feel are important to engage. So for that journey, it is 1997 for us to start the journey. And that can be worked through, sometimes it's worked through the fellowship, sometimes it's worked through the church, depending on how it's structured. I've been hired by to equip churches individually, and then I've been hired by denominations to equip members within a denomination. So it just really depends. I also go to a lot of seminaries and speak and do equipping with young ministers who are very excited about reaching across cultural boundaries for Christ. And that has been a wonderful journey also. The book is on Amazon. It is in paperback and in Kindle, and there's also an audiobook. So you can also enjoy it through an audiobook and engage that way. Also in the summer, we'll be having, for people that have signed up, we'll be having Wednesday master classes for people just to come in and just ask questions and be engaged in a master class. And you can show up anytime and be a part of a master class. And I think that just, it's the continuous motion that I am seeking for churches. I don't want it to be a one and done kind of a course, but a course in which we're really growing in actions. We're growing in our skills. We're growing in our outreach. And this is one area that is often, it's actually managed very well in business, but oftentimes not so well in the church. So I want to help churches and church leaders continue in this vein.
May I ask who's the author of the book?
I'm the author of the book, Dana.
Oh.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
She literally wrote the book on it. That's what I just heard.
She literally wrote the book, and it's right there too in my picture on the wall.
I think it's a very true statement that we will sit and have discussions about the need to do things, or what we see as the obvious barriers between our congregation and the community or the context that we're located in, but then there's no action. So I really appreciate, an understanding that these conversations need to go to a next level. And then I think a lot of times church folks just don't know how to do that. How do you, okay, we diagnose the problem. We see, that there are people in our community that we're not reaching, and that we want to have more than just a transactional, encounter with, and, just giving things to people, and we don't know these people or anything about them, and wanting to kind of engage in relationships, but really not knowing how to do that.
That was actually one of the biggest questions that I had from congregations when we finished like the first 2 hours of the training, and they would say, okay, this is wonderful, but how do I do it? How do I do it? And I said, okay, that's what we're getting ready to talk about now. So that is the difficult part. It is that discomfort. It is that willingness to see the discomfort and to experience that discomfort. If your number is 28 to 35, there's going to be some discomfort there. But the way we handle it is because I'm a Christian certified coach. We're asking the questions that you really have the answers to. And my goal is to help you answer those questions and to see your community in front of you and come up with those answers. And oftentimes the congregation and the person in the course comes up with those answers on their own when they see this path. They just need some help seeing the path.
And it's different for every context. It's going to be a different answer. I think we want to be able to open your book and read it and have all the answers for our particular context, but that's just not the way it works. We have to do the homework about who's in our communities and demographic studies and how big our community is to even realize who's not in the church with us or who we might be missing out on reaching and building relationships with. So
That's right. And there are different levels of that. So you can pay for the research, or I can show you how to do the research very easily on your own. So there's different levels of that. You don't have to spend a lot of money on that research portion, but those demographics are available all over the United States based on the census and other programs that offer those demographics to us. And once again, this is not about diversity and inclusion. This is about the gospel. This is about reaching all people. This is what we're called to do. And I say that our churches strike poses on valuable pieces of real estate, yet many of us remain impoverished to reach across cultural boundaries for Christ. And we are commissioned to reach all people for the sake of the gospel. And it is what we are called to do. So this is, so I want to make sure it's not about the diversity and inclusion. It's about our outreach. It is about our discipleship. And how we have in our humanness limited God's reach through us.
are there any other questions? So we'd like to ask you all if you're able and willing to just leave your email in the chat. That would be great. I'm going to take your email, and I'm going to forward everyone's emails over to Reverend Dr. Danette, and she's going to be sending out some information to you. We also have this session recorded. If at any point you want to share it with your congregation. I think another thing that we might be able to add here, unless you're going to send it out individually, is more information about how they can register for the class that you'll have.
Yes.
Are you going to be sending that out to
Yes,
them?
so what I will do is once I receive your information, I'll send you a link to sign up for a call with me, 30 minutes to an hour. No charge for that. We'll just sit down and talk about what where you're looking to go, where God is leading you. And then from there, I'll know which information to send to you. So I'll send you the link for the call for us to have a one-on-one conversation.
Okay, wonderful. Well, again, on behalf of the region, I just thank everybody for being here and being a part of the session. Reverend Dr. Danette, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom again, and blessings to you all as we continue our Mindful Mondays next week. Hope you'll be able to register and tune in for that, and take care on your Lenten journeys. Y'all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, everyone. God bless. Blessings to everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Enjoy.
Good night. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.